Well, good morning once again. This is Bill Cloud, and this is On This Day. And today is the seventh day of the month Adar. Now, tradition teaches that on this day, many key events transpired, all of which centered around the culmination of Moses' life and his ministry. Tradition believes that on this day, Moses was born in Egypt, and on this day, many years later, of course, Moses died on Mount Nebo. But before expiring, Moses would give his farewell benediction to the people of Israel and would recite a song that in Hebrew is called the Shirah. It's recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, as raindrops on the tender herb and as showers on the grass. For I proclaim the name of the Lord. Ascribe greatness to our God. He is the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are justice, a God of truth and without injustice. Righteous and upright is he. Now, as this song continues, we see that it juxtaposes God's goodness and righteousness with the unfaithfulness of Israel. It also acknowledges that in spite of their unfaithfulness, God is ever faithful and would nevertheless redeem them from among the nations. In short, Moses' song is a prophecy of all the things that would come upon Israel from that time up until the time of their redemption. It's amazing that with unbelievable clarity and accuracy, Moses laid out the entire history of the nation of Israel from his day until our day. And according to Moses, it was very important that the people of Israel, God's people for that matter, remembered what he had to say. Going back to Deuteronomy 32, Moses finished speaking all these words to all Israel, and he said to them, set your hearts on all the words which I testify among you today, which you shall command your children to be careful to observe, all the words of this law. For it is not a futile thing for you, because it is your life. And by this word you shall prolong your days in the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. So obviously, this song was not something Moses had contrived of his own resources, but it was a manifestation of the inspiration that he received directly from the Creator, the one who tells the end from the beginning. Another amazing thing to consider is that God gave this very poetic prophecy to Moses in spite of the man's imperfections. That's the point. God used a very imperfect man, a murderer in Moses' case, to lead a nation in such a way that 3,500 years later, we're still talking about it. As a reminder of Moses' imperfection, something that he allowed to be demonstrated on more than one occasion, mind you, just after reciting this prophetic song, God reminded Moses of his impending death. Then the Lord spoke to Moses that very same day, saying, go up to this mountain of the Abarim, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, across from Jericho. View the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel as a possession, and die on the mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people, just as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. The life of Moses has multiple lessons from which we can learn things that we can appropriate into our own lives. And one of the most striking things is this. God can take anyone who is willing to submit their will to his, they're willing to follow him, to be obedient to him. He can use those people for a great purpose. Now, sometimes that purpose won't be like it was with Moses. A lot of times it may never be known to the entire world. Sometimes it will, but that's not the most important thing. What's important is that the person is willing to do what God has called them to do. It's about being content in doing what God has called you to do, and especially if no one's ever going to know about it. It's being willing to say to God that whatever he's given you to say, you're going to go out and share that with people, whether they like it or not. Another point that we can learn from Moses is that he was a meek man. In fact, as far as I can tell, he was a man who really didn't want the job that he was called to do. Maybe that's something that actually qualified him for the job. Maybe his unwillingness to want the job made him the perfect prospect. And that is a quite compelling thing to consider when we look at those who in today's world aspire to lead people. In other words, most of them want the job. Finally, it's important to remember that the Bible says that there would be one who would follow Moses, as it were, who would be like unto Moses, but who would be considered greater than Moses. Of course, he is the one who made it possible for imperfect people like you and me to come into right standing with the same God who called Moses. In other words, it's the Messiah who makes it possible for you and me to be able to impact and influence others, to lead our families, our community, our nation, and together as a body, the world. Corporately, we have the ability in Him to directly influence the course of history. But it's not because of our goodness or our talents or gifts. It's not by might, it's not by our power, but it's by His Spirit. If we're willing to submit and to be led by His Spirit. So then, Moses teaches us a lot, but the greatest teacher is the Spirit of God who works in us and through us. That brings us to the close of today's devotion. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Shalom.
Like what you're hearing? Become a Bill Cloud Premium Partner to watch or listen to hundreds of hours of teachings and resources on demand. Go to BillCloud.com/subscribe to start watching today.